Ginger Costa Jackson, a 2012 graduate of the Met's Lindemann program, strode into the first act scene of Virginia Opera's new production of Carmen with the irresistible confidence of a woman who knows she can turn any man's head and enjoys that knowledge. Those flashing eyes, that carmine slash of a mouth. Costa Jackson's Carmen was, like Lord Byron, mad, bad, and dangerous to know. She didn't have a huge voice, but she didn't need to. She could have whispered her way through the role and still been stunning. Tenor Dinyar Vanya looked the part of Don Jose, the soldier who falls in love with Carmen. He had a nice Andy Garcia sort of look, a country boy in way over his head. However, his passionate voice unfortunately went sharp on just about every high note. Worse, he had absolutely no chemistry with his village sweetheart, Micaela. Without that, and without establishing Don Jose from the very beginning as an upright and virtuous man who is a challenge to Carmen's sexual rapacity, the tension falls apart. Poor Don Jose, instead of being a tragic figure destroyed by a heedless woman, came across as just another poor schlub under the gypsy's spell, though there are intimations throughout of the desperation that will bring him to violence. Hollow-eyed and disheveled in the last act, Vanya finally pulled it all together. As Micaela, Corinne Winters was shy with the jeering soldiers but plucky enough to persist and convey to Don Jose his mother's wish that they marry. Winters' voice was perhaps too powerful for the role. Less sweet village maiden and more likely to go one-on-one with her rival, which threw off the balance of the characters. Winters was more moving in the third act scene in the mountains, where she followed her love to the smuggler's hideout. In a touching aria, she protested, "I am not afraid." But she was. The arrogant Toreador Escamillo was sung by bass baritone Ryan Custer, whose voice had a curiously muffled effect in the second act, but was better in succeeding scenes. He had the physique for the part, which included a well-choreographed knife fight with Don Jose in Act 3. The biggest surprise was the performance of the two smugglers, Le Dancaire, sung by baritone Andre Chang, and Le Remendado, sung by David Blaylock, tenor. Chang had awesome clarity of voice, superb diction, and that indefinable thing called presence. When he was on stage, you had to look at him. Blaylock's lighter, higher voice blended beautifully with Chang's in duet and dialogue. They were terrific. As the gypsies Frasquita and Mercedes, the voice of soprano Jenny Hauser and mezzo Courtney Miller blended beautifully, and their acting was crisply effective. Bass baritone Matthew Scollins sang the role of the tall, lantern-jawed Zuniga, Don Jose's superior officer, with gusto and a hint of menace. The production values were excellent. Updating to the 1950s, Marilee Murray Walsh's costumes hit the mark with the women's full skirts and narrow waists, the men's fedoras, the officers' uniforms, and the smugglers' leather garb. Even the shoes, which are the hardest to get right in period costuming, were very good indeed. The sad sack group of recruits in the first act was hilariously perfect. And in the final act, Carmen's embroidered lace gown was a true work of art. The large chorus was very well trained by Adam Turner. Bizet wrote some brutally fast passages for chorus and for small groups, which they handled with clear, precise diction. Stage director Tazewell Thompson had much more to work with than last season's relatively static The Pearl Fishers. In Carmen, he was still into scrims for whatever reason, but there were knife fights, dances, and a rolling on the ground, hair-pulling cat fight in the first act, all well choreographed by Anthony Salatino and seamlessly integrated into the overall story by Thompson. David Gordon's sets had a great sense of real places, yet allowed the singers and dancers to move freely. Players from the Richmond Symphony were under the competent baton of Grammy and Tony Award-winning conductor John DeMaine, but Bizet's stirring rhythms and distinctive melodies were, as always, the star. From the other side of the Footlights, I'm M.D. Ridge.